Started.
Yeah. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of O.A.T.S Live Talks. Late night edition because that is fan requested. Yeah. And today we're talking about being a supervisor and kind of making your way up into the industry to get into leadership positions. I'm going to try to not play around with my glass too much. So our guests today are Megan and Patrick. And if you want to introduce yourselves, go right ahead.
I'm Megan. Most people are really tired of seeing my face because you put it everywhere. But I do it with love. Yeah, I guess we're streaming this on Twitch too, so there may be a few people watching. Yeah, I'm assistant director on Hilda, and I've been supervising groups of people for most of my animation career. So it's definitely a thing I have experience with.
Yeah, Patrick.
Hi guys, I'm Patrick. I've been working for 18 years or so in Ottawa. I'm an animation director at Atomic. But I've been in Ottawa for the last 10 years, so working around the industry here. So awesome. That's how I snuck into the O.A.T.S group.
There you go. Yeah, so I want to, since we have the introductions down a bit of it, who you are and where you're working and what you're working as, I kind of want to ask how you both got into the industry in the first place and a little bit about early career stuff. So we'll go with Patrick first this time.
Cool. So when I was in high school, I went to Disney World for the first time, and I know it's a little late for that kind of a trip, but they were working on Mulan at the time, and I got to see all the production boards that were up on the walls and stuff as you toured through that studio. They had some cool maquettes and stuff, and I was like, man, this is really cool how much work they put into this stuff. When I got home, I was at Chapters, and I'd seen a book. It was The Art of Tarzan, and it had a lot of Glen Keane drawings in it, and I was amazed at this stuff. And I tried to buy it, but it was $60, so I didn't. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to make some money if I'm gonna buy this stuff. So maybe I'll just get into animation. I was drawing and stuff because I was into comic books and stuff like that. And friends of mine who were also into comics at the time had been making their own comics, and they were giving me shit for not drawing. Because how could you like something and not want to do it yourself was the idea, and I thought that made a lot of sense. So I started drawing more. And once I had seen this stuff, like that Glen Keane book, those drawings were so good. Those Tarzans, I was like, man, you have to be really good to be an animator. I bet. Maybe I can do it if I get the computer to do it for me. I'll just take a 3D course and work on stuff like Toy Story and ants and stuff. So I took a 1-year program in Halifax at a school that no longer exists. It was a 10-month course for $13,000 that suggested they would teach you everything you needed to know. They didn't teach us a lot. They tried, but they were scrapping together what they could with what they had, which was nothing. My animation teacher was a photographer who was, doing the same programs, basically doing Maya tutorials right out of the program, right out of the help menu, and then a month later we would do it. So good luck us. And that's when I started picking up some extra books on the side to be like, okay, how do we actually animate? Because I'm starting to get the impression that we're not going to do very well. Thankfully, that's where we at the end of that course, there was a guy who had taken the course a few years previous to me, He was the son of a big Nova Scotia painter named Thomas Forrestal. So his name was Frank Forrestal. He had gotten some attention to make some animation himself, to do a little gig, and he'd come to our school to see if there was anybody who would work on it, and saw my walk cycles that I had done in Flash, and I was like, forget all that 3D stuff, and come work in Flash. And I was like, all right, cool. There's actually a job coming out of this. That's awesome. And the rest is just scraping by by the elbows the entire rest of the way.
Awesome. Sounds tough.
Yeah, animation's a fickle mistress.
There you go.
Yeah.
Megan, how did you get into the industry?
Mine's way more straightforward. Basically, I had a chance to do a bit of animation in my final year of high school, where Van Arts, I'm from BC, so Van Arts was doing like a, come to the school for a week and we'll show you like a little something about animation. And I tried that out and it was pretty fun. I hadn't considered animation before that, just because I was actually more going to the sciences in high school. But I was just like a big nerd and I was watching too much anime, and I was taking Japanese classes too. And I'm like, I want to go to Japan and subtitle things and be a mangaka. So, but what I ended up doing was I did go to school for animation, but it was a few years after I graduated from high school. I kind of like floated around a bit and just had retail jobs. And I ended up taking it because it interested me, but I wasn't like super convinced that I was going to be really passionate about it. It was just something I could do. It was like, I like to draw. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm 21. I guess I'll go to college. And hey, there's one down the street that teaches animation. Well, that's handy. I had no clue. I just happened to move into a decent spot in Ottawa. So I went there. I did school for 3 years. Still didn't like animation when I graduated. Again, it was something I enjoyed. Like, I liked watching it. I just didn't like doing it. I was like, I struggle with it. I was frustrated with it. And I got a job. But it's the early years of my career were basically me double guessing if I had made the right choice. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of and I like to kind of say that because people know I'm really ingrained in animation now. But I wasn't always. I didn't start off super passionate about it. And I don't think you have to start off super passionate about it too. It's not for everybody, but everyone sort of finds their own niche. But yeah, I sort of made it work for me. So.
Awesome.
So, good. You made the right choice after all?
I guess I did.
There you go.
It turned out okay. So I was lucky.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. So I'm going to follow up that question with a little bit further into both your careers of when was the first time you got a promotion in the animation industry? And when you did you ask for a promotion or was it recognized from your talents? Yeah. Whoever wants to take it can go.
The first promotion I got, like when I got hired at one of my jobs, like my second job, I was working for Kaleidoscope out in Halifax, and this company isn't around anymore, but at the time I was hired on to do animation. But the first day when I showed up, they were like, you'll be doing paint, which is, at the time we were classically animating everything. The animators would animate it, and then we would have ink and paint departments.
Was it Delilah and Julius?
No, this is right before Delilah and Julius. This was a show called Girl Stuff, Boy Stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was awesome. Canadian classic. And but yeah, we had a team of I think it was like 5 people doing ink, and then 3 of us were doing paint. And literally the job was just taking an eye drop tool and a paint bucket, and if it didn't fill right, finish the drawing wherever it might need a little gap, but no, be careful. And it was so so basic, but thankful to have a job. It wasn't the animation job I thought I was getting, but at the same time, I was a little bit nervous that I wasn't going to do very well with that, having only had experience on one other production. So during that time, though, I was doing some fixes on the animation, and there was a scene where someone was flipping through pages of a book, and the animator had forgotten to put all the detail on the pages. So I had just put the details in, and animated that. And then I let the supervisor know, the animation supervisor, who was like, "Oh, don't worry about that. We'll get someone to fix it." And I was like, "Oh no, it's already done." And it was like, "Oh, like, oh, actually, that looks pretty good. Like, okay, well, you have you guys been doing?" And I was like, "Have you guys been doing these fixes all the time?" And I was like, "Yeah, whenever anything is, a little bit off, we're helping push it just a little bit more." And they eventually consolidated the group so that ink and paint were doing ink and paint rather than having an ink department and a paint department. So that was my first little like victory. And then because I was staying late to do some of that, there was another animator there at the time who was also staying late. He was a lead animator. And so we were talking a lot and became friends. And he let me know about a job that was starting in a different city. But, if I wanted to get in on animation, I could go into that position there. So that's how I got that leg up. And then when I went on to that position in that job, at the end of that one, the animation director at that point had said, "Hey, you're doing like a lot of growing really quickly. Yeah, I see good things for you. I'm going back to work on this other project, but I need an animation supervisor because this one is going to be tied up with this project. So I need somebody fresh to do it. Do you want that?" And that was my first supervising position, which was way too early to be supervising, but learned a lot.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll pass it off to Megan now. When was the first time you got a promotion within the industry?
I would say it was on Stella and Sam, which was my third show I had worked on. And I had actually started work on it not that long after I had gotten laid off for the second time. So I had worked on 2 shows. I had gotten laid off. I came back. I got laid off again. And after the second time, I sort of was like, okay, no one really knows me. I'm just sort of spinning my wheels. Like I'm doing my job. Like I'm doing the frames. I'm sitting down doing the work, but it wasn't making an impact, and I wasn't enjoying myself either. Like even I felt like I was sort of like, what am I doing? So when I came back, and Stella and Sam was this really adorable preschool show, and preschool was like an easier place for me to start with than like I had worked on Jimmy Two Shoes and Kick Buttowski, but I really struggled with wacky timing and comedy. So I sort of made a point on this new show to go, I'm going to make them remember me, and I'm going to like make them want to get to know me. So I kind of made a point to communicate more and talk with other people, because I had we used to have a night shift back in the day. And I had gone from night shift to day shift, and that's where all like the supervisors and like the directors were. So like I felt like I had gone from like this little teeny group of people to a much bigger pool, and no one knew who I was, even though I had worked on several shows. So I had helped people out. I remember a few nights where if we had to hit a deadline and I was done my work, I would stay and help other people finish their work, if it was like finishing off lip sync or anything like that. I wasn't the best animator, but I wanted to make a point that I could help and be reliable. So one day my supervisor, she was going on, it was Kim Buck was my supervisor at the time. And she was going on vacation, and my boss Brian was like, okay, well, we need someone to cover for her. Can you cover for her for the 2 weeks? So that was like my first time trying out supervising, and again, it was like I'll step in to help because I was reliable. And then the next time they needed a supervisor, I believe it was because Ryan Hobbs was moving on to Fish Hooks. He had been the supervisor on the show and he was moving to a different project. They asked me to do it. So that was sort of the first time. And I learned so much as a supervisor. It's amazing how you learn so much about your own animation when you're helping other people.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. The question actually overlaps with a lot of other questions I had written down too. Yeah. So my other one was going to be, how did you make yourself stand out, either with your skills or with how you interact with your coworkers and superiors? And you answer most of that. There you go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it took me a long time to be comfortable with animation. It took me a long time to be a person that someone could go, oh, okay, just give her a scene and she'll make it look good. Like that, I really, really had to work at that. But in the meantime, I was someone who was reliable, who could problem solve, who would talk and sort of like what Pat was doing, which is like filling in the blanks that you see, really.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that I was just looking at it like, is this ready to go on TV? And if not, then what can you do to make it look like it should be on TV? Because sometimes it's I think that when you're part of a team that there's so many people involved, it's really easy to like shrug it off and be like, someone else will fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have a team with fixers or retake artists and all kinds of stuff, where you're like, it doesn't matter if I don't finish this because someone else will. And the more people on the team, the more easily you fall into that. But like to have that command over your own work and say, no, this is my responsibility. I'm gonna get this done. And that really does help a lot. And how do you get noticed for it? It's really tough. There are some really good animators who, I mean, if you're like amazing, it's really hard not to stand out. But there really are a lot of people who are doing great work who are very quiet, and they don't end up picking anybody's interests because they don't stand out. Mm-hmm. They're not very communicative. I know some of the people at Mercury who were like that as well. Who they were like, why aren't I being selected for promotions? And you're like, you show up on time and get your work done, and it looks great. It always does exactly what it needs to do. It doesn't need to be fixed. You're reliable, and then you disappear at the end of your shift, and you get paid for it well, and you're all good. But there's nothing outside of that mm-hmm. to bring any attention to you. If there's no flag, positive or negative, then nobody's talking to you and nobody's asking you, what do you want? Where are you trying to, where are you trying to go? So it is always nice to have that.
I do want.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there is a difference too between like promotions in terms of your like position, right? Like going from like animator to a supervisor is different than getting like a raise. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't think that getting reviews and raises, it doesn't matter if you're quiet or not, that should just be mm-hmm. a thing for every worker. Yeah. Like that. So just to kind of know the difference between the two, you don't have to be incredibly extroverted to be able to ask her for a raise or review or anything like that. But it does seem that to actually like get to that next step, like ladder wise, the squeaky wheels do tend to get the grease. I'm hoping it's not always going to be like that as studios, start to value different contributions to lead to this. Like I feel like it's starting to change, but for now it is still good to be a very like strong self-advocate.
Yeah. I also want to point out too that just because you go to your job, do it well, and then leave, and that's it. That's totally fine. That
Oh
like
yeah.
that if you want to be that kind of worker, that's totally okay to do. And
Mhm.
you don't need to like do anything more if you're okay with that. Like it's not a bad thing to be just go in and do your job and get paid and be happy with your home life.
Yeah.
100%.
It all depends on where you want to go as a person, and there's so many different positions. A leadership position, or like being a supervisor or running your own crew, is not for everyone. Like it's not. It is very rewarding. Like I find it a very rewarding part of my job. It's difficult, but like I naturally gear towards it. I want to be involved with people, even though it's nice to sit down and not have anybody talk to me for the entire day. That would be like amazing. Oh my god, that'd be like a miracle. But I like it does give you, it is a rewarding job, but it's up to you. There were like, because even I was working at a job that everyone was like thinking was like cool, like, oh yeah, you're animating, that's where you wanted to go, right? And I'm like, is it? So you kind of, we get our own things out of different positions. So yeah, this is definitely not a thing to say like, oh, you got to grow on the ladder. If you're happy where you are, then cool. But
Yeah. There's a lot of animators who are not social people who like, just are okay with getting paid.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
And if you're good at it, like that's the other thing, is that like it's really hard if you've got an animator who's excelling at the work that they're doing. If you become invaluable in your position, where it's like, oh, we can't afford to lose you, then it makes it very hard to want to pull you out of that position, which can be a catch-22, because I know some of those people do want to move out, and obviously that should always be communicated. If you're the strongest animator on your team and you're like, I want you to be compensated for this, like that's where it comes down to, like, maybe you get a senior position, or you get a pay bump, or whatever it is that makes you happy. But like there's always that question of like, okay, if we're moving somebody into a supervising role, is that so that we can take whatever skills that they have and try to communicate them to the other people, and try to have people learn from them, which is really nice. But that does take good communication skills and some forward thinking on their part. It can be tricky when you're trying to figure out where somebody is best served, or maybe they just want to work in a different department entirely and flesh out their
That'll be another talk, switching tracks. But yeah, that kind of goes into another question I wanted to ask about what communication skills do you think it's important for getting into leadership positions?
I think one thing that I've sort of, because like I'm in a position right now to oversee a lot of different departments. And what I'm learning a lot about communication isn't just saying something to someone, it's understanding how that other person communicates. I communicate with my animators differently than I communicate with production, because they need different types of information. Mm-hmm. There are ways that I work with animators, because that's where my experience is in animation. So it's really easy for me to go, oh, we think like this, and it's easier to workflow like that, and this. And then when it comes to other departments, I realize that doesn't work. Mm. Right? So shoehorning, that's not going to do anything. So communication's really good if you're going to be in a management position, but it expands to, you have to listen to what people are telling you. You have to be open-minded. You have to be okay with making mistakes. Like to be in a position where you are either giving revisions, or you're communicating with, like, maybe your crew is 8 different people, and even that's hard enough. And then maybe your crew's like 30 people or more, and it's going to happen that you are going to say something that will upset someone. You are going to rub someone the wrong way, and be it valid or not. Like, you can have okay reasons for it, or you can have not okay reasons for it, but it still will get to you. You have to be able to put your personal feelings aside, and the defensiveness that you may feel at the time aside, to listen to the people on your crew, even if what they're saying is not, maybe you don't agree with it. It's your responsibility as a leader to listen. You know, like I make choices all the time where I'm like, listen, guys, I know you're asking for this stuff. I can't give it to you. This is why, but I hear you. I understand why you're asking for those things. And I can keep that in mind as I move forward. And generally that's something that, like, that's just what people want.
Mm-hmm.
They understand that things are out of your control as like a supervisor or as a director. But it is still really important for people to have their voices heard. So communication definitely important, but it's that the listening quality to sit down and to kind of just put everything on the table is definitely a very good skill to have.
For sure. Yeah, Patrick, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, what she said.
Okay, good.
See, listening. No, yeah, no, those are all really good points. Yeah, that's excellent. Like even just the points of yeah, when you're speaking to different people, everybody wants something different out of the production. It's really nice to go in and going, I know what I want, and it's something entirely different when you're like, okay, you're supervising, so the director wants one thing out of you, the production team wants another thing out of you, the animators want another thing, and each of those animators want something slightly different. And from an animator's perspective, like one of the best things you can do is be very clear about what you want. A lot of people just don't want to work overtime. A lot of people want to know how they can get better, and knowing what somebody wants is great, because when you're assigning scenes, you can take that into account. You can communicate that with them when you're giving revisions, where sometimes it's just like, hey, just do this and that and it'll be good. Like the scene will communicate what it needs to and we can go from there. But sometimes people want to push a little bit more and they're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, well, let's push this action a little bit more. You kind of we can really break that down and get into it. Yeah, the scene works as it is, but if you really want to spice it up, then you have those options. But knowing what somebody wants is really going to help out a lot.
Yeah, everyone's different. Like there's an end goal. There is, you're trying to get, a certain amount of time, animation time out with a certain quality, which are the two factors. And it's like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, this is your crew. You have to work with their strengths in order to pull that off. And the only way you're going to know their strengths is if you get to know your crew and you listen to your crew. And that doesn't mean that you work specifically like to everybody's needs, because you do need to trust that you have experience as well and that you're there for a reason. And you kind of have to trust your gut too. So this is what I mean about the whole making mistakes thing. You're going to give someone a bunch of frames and it's going to stress them out so much that they need to take like a few days off. Yeah. And it's like, wow, I didn't actually know that all those group shots would impact you. I just didn't know what else to do. And it's like, it's okay. Just talk to them. See if you can like lighten the load like the next time, just be close with it. But it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It is going to happen. I've had people fully come up to my office upset at me, and it's tough. Like it's tough. Like for me, like I'm also a people pleaser. Like I want everyone to be happy and like rainbows and cupcakes and stuff. But for every person who's kind of like gotten upset, I have seen the passion behind them. And I understand their reasons as an artist. A lot of the times when someone else is upset, like the hard thing about being a supervisor is understanding 100% what that person's going through, empathizing with them, but needing to put your own responsibility and your job sometimes there. And you go, I'm sorry, but this is what I had to do for my job. And that's sort of the tough part that you have to be as a leader every once in a while. And that was some of the advice that I got on season 1 of Hilda. And it's tough. But with that being said, there's also so many people you connect with. It's incredibly rewarding when you see someone that you've been like mentoring have an aha moment, or, you know, when they talk to you about how you made their job easier, especially when people come in from school and they don't expect their supervisors to be like them, and then they get you as a first supervisor and they're like, it's so much nicer than I thought it was. You know, and it's nice to be there for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to be able to sit and talk with them and get to know them, and when they do feel comfortable with you, you know, share a bit more of themselves, and you can make friends. Like there's people in my crew I'm friends with, you know, so there's a lot of, I don't want to scare anybody from some of the challenging bits. There's a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, you always seem to be one question ahead of me.
I can feel the flow of the questions.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass it off to Patrick and ask him, how does being in a leadership position change your relationship with the coworkers around you?
A severe decline in the amount of respect you have for people. No, I'm just kidding. That's yeah, no, that's a good question. It is interesting because, like Megan had pointed out earlier, like you learn a lot about your own work when you're supervising other people's scenes, because you're seeing how other people work, what their thought process was, and also you're seeing between, like, I find it really hard. I've always found it hard to judge anybody by a batch of scenes, because even when I was doing animation, when I was animating, like I'd always average out 4 batches, because 4 handouts, because you could just get like piled on all these walk cycles in one handout, and then, you know, if you don't get those done, you feel bad, or if you don't have the time to make them look nice, you feel bad. There's all kinds of reasons to feel bad about your work. And then in the next batch, maybe it's just a tricky character, and then again, it might be something, you know, it's much better once you've got a good 4 sections out before you can average that out. And I found that while supervising, somebody might give you some scenes that'll look friggin' fantastic, and you'll be like, wow, they nailed it, they know exactly what they're doing. I'm dumping on them on the next batch, because I know that they can carry the team through for the next whatever.
Yeah.
And then they struggle and they stress and they come to you and they're like, oh, I can't handle this, like what the F. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I had no idea, you just had a really nice settle. And then you're like, oh, I guess that was just a settle, like it's not really like, you know, picking over, like, hey, like, you know, they had some solid keys and some nice work, doesn't mean that they can handle anything you throw at them. So it always does take time to get to know what your team can do. And yeah, it can be really tricky, especially if you're handing out like a month's worth of work at a time. That always, you know, prolongs that timeline. But yeah, it is less like Survivor. It's not like I didn't come here to make friends, but I do try to be wary that it's not too much like The Office, where you end up becoming a Michael Scott because you're at work all the time and you're not getting out very much, and then you start seeing your coworkers as like, oh, like we're all friends, and it's like, yeah, you totally can be, but like people want to know that you have some, you know, like you have responsibility over their livelihoods. To a certain extent, right? Like supervisors aren't going around like firing anybody, like that's not, but I did when I was 24 and I had that first supervising position, you know, we did make that joke, and it was like, you know, looking back, that's really not cool. That's not cool. Like that's serious stuff. So it's a lot of responsibility, and with great responsibility comes great power. No, the other way around.
The other way around.
But yeah, Spider-Man's got good words.
It's one of those things that I have to keep in mind too, that, you know, as much as I want to be friends with everyone, like I still, and I think a lot of people who I've been to school with, and even like with the O.A.T.S chat and all that, is like, you have to be aware of the fact that you have power over a group of people. and that if you are someone's first supervisor, you have a lot of power over them. Like you have the ability to make them either, like you're directly influencing their path.
And
And
their whole perception of what the
yeah,
industry is like.
yeah. And it's something that, you know, even I have to be careful about what I say, because I will affect people in ways that I never thought I could, just because they see me as like more of an influential person. So they go like, oh, she's working on this and she's cool because she's doing that or whatever. That actually changes their view. Like that means that my words can be taken way more seriously than I intend. You know, so that's, and it's the same with me and the people I work with. Like like when Andy says something, like I take it to heart, because like I work with the guy and I respect him and like I want to do good, right? So it's like I have that same thing too. And that's sort of a weird thing when you're in that position to realize you have that power. So it is good to kind of understand your boundaries as well, especially if, you know, you're like me and I'm in my 30s and then people are starting school and I was like, we're 12 years apart, you know.
But like it's totally cool to like dish over like, you know, whatever TV series you guys both watch that isn't The Office apparently. But like it's totally cool to do that. It's just a different thing when you're like you do sort of have to remember that some of the friendliness coming your way is because you're in a position of power.
Yeah.
And everybody looks up to the person that they're dealing with and trying to get on good terms with them, because nobody wants to have a hostile relationship. That's terrible. Mm-hmm. So, you know, everyone's trying to be friendly. Like you're trying to be friendly with your production team, with your directors, with your supervisors and your animators, and everybody's just trying to get along and be nice. But you know, when I first got into animation, I was like, oh, we're all into Disney stuff. And then I quickly learned that no, we're not. Like a lot of people got into animation because they're like, I really like Star Trek and I like ships. And they're like, I like anime and I like the magical girl stuff, like Bishoujo's, whatever. And then you got, you know, it's just a lot of different subgenres. It's not the 70s anymore, guys.
No, we can tangent into all the different subgenres of different fandoms. We can do that.
Yeah. But yeah, some people just want to work on like South Park and stuff. Like, oh yeah, I'd love to work on Rick and Morty. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. That'd be all right, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to a little bit of points that you were both talking about with more about power dynamics. I feel like I see a lot of younger people in the industry who are new to it, or even who are just in school, who are a little bit, they want to get into positions of power just because they feel like they were not in a position of power before. And how that going into leadership positions through that track, or like, I want to get into a leadership position with that kind of state of mind, how that might not be as helpful for being a leader in a leadership position.
That tracks.
Yeah, because so many students come out of school like, I want to go back and be a teacher because I didn't like how they taught things. So now I got to go teach the way I want to teach. But that doesn't change the way they're teaching. You're just changing the power dynamics.
It's definitely, yeah. And I will say, like, because that's sort of how I function. Like, I am really happy that I'm in a position right now that I can kind of put my money where my mouth is, right? But the journey to getting here with that in mind is a negative one. Mm-hmm. You know, I will say that, like, sure, I climbed the ladder, like it became, you know, an animation supervisor. And even like on the first season of Hilda, I was like an animation director, but I wouldn't say I was in a healthy mindset. I wouldn't say I was a good leader. A lot of the things I've learned about leadership and like what I feel like it is, I've only learned within the last few years because of the hole it put me in, and not like the good, you know, my happy place hole, the bad hole, mm-hmm. The one that's not in the forest, it's in concrete and terrible. And that's why I started O.A.T.S, because like I needed some positivity. So there is a distinct difference for me, and there is some crossover because I'm still me as a person, and I still think the same way, and or like I function very similar. But there's definitely like more negative stress supervisor me, and now less stressed supervisor me that has a lot more positivity. And it's drastically changed the emotional impact I get on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding what's in my control and what positive impacts I can make it so that I can leave my job, go home and be chill and, you know, not have it impact me. Whereas before, when I'm like, oh, I hate this and I hate this, and why isn't it like that? And if I did this, then it would be like that. I can say that as much as I want. I didn't have the power to change it. And even when I did, it didn't make me feel any better. It just made me feel like a miserable person. So, you know, it's not a bad, to want to make positive change is not a bad thing. To go and like, you know, I had a bad experience and I want to go back because I feel like I feel like I could do better. I feel like I could impact in a better way. That's fine. But it also is not our job to fix systems, like whole systems on our own. And that's why I like these group chats, because it's only through multiple people and talking do we sort of make slow change to systems. So if you're going to go in singular going like I do it too. I'm going to go in, I'm going to fix it. I got all of the list of things I'm going to do differently. That's all well and good, but you are going to burn out because it's too big of a thing to do on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when you're suggesting that we're going to have to make some changes now that I'm in charge,
oh yeah,
you have to pitch that to
yes.
a team of people who are like, no, we've always done it this other way. What the hell are you thinking? And you're like, trust me, it'll work. And they're like, this is your first time doing it. Why would we trust you?
Yeah.
So
you have to understand the systems you're going into.
Yeah. Like I remember listening to a podcast about a guy getting into politics. Like this is a bit of an aside, but like he was saying that like, you know, you get into politics and you want to change the world, and you're like, yeah, we're gonna do this and this and this. I'm gonna have all these things. I'm gonna vote the way I want, and I'm gonna have integrity. And you quickly learn like the kinds of that you can't just stake your flag on every hill and be like this battle, because it's you just don't have that kind of energy, and people will, you won't make any friends. But that's politics. But in animation, it's like, yeah, like you still do have to acknowledge that, yeah, if you're stepping up and saying, I know at least one thing that needs to be changed, it's like that doesn't mean that you're ready to run an entire production or anything, or
yeah,
that just means that you're great at isolating that one issue that, you know, everybody probably agrees with you on.
Yeah. And that goes back to understanding how other people communicate, because you from your end can see the solution from your side of things. You don't necessarily understand the complications on the other side of things. So when you get involved, you know, there's nothing more frustrating than being more involved in animation. The higher you go in the ladder, the more you're going to go, why can't I go back? Well, just because like some of the methods will be frustrating because it's a lot of moving cogs and they're not always effective. But understanding someone else's side of things, not to say you agree with their choices. There's a lot of times that I hear things that I 100% don't agree with. But if it's coming from a system like a school or a studio, chances are you need to see what led to that choice and not the choice itself. And that's kind of how you can start going, like filling in the little blanks that kind of help you climb the ladder. We had some people I remember on some shows going like, wow, I wish, like, maybe you like remember on Lion Guard, or Jeff, I can't remember if you were there at the time. I think it was actually first season, but like someone made like a whole like like list or like a spreadsheet of like reuse poses or whatever, kind of like early on, so that if someone had to reuse something, they like made a whole thing that you can find stuff really quick. So it's almost like, okay, well, here's the problem. I'm going to find my own solution to it. Instead of trying to change the system or like demand this change, I'm going to go, yeah, actually, how would I, like Pat said, like pitch it? Like, why don't I come up with this instead? And those are the sort of things that are really valuable. And I think, you know, anyone can do it at any level. You don't have to be, that's like part of you putting yourself forward is filling those blanks. You don't have to wait until you're in a supervisor position to do it.
Yeah. That does remind me of seeing a few requests for reuse pages, and I just don't know who would have the time to do it sometimes. So
yeah, well, that's the thing too, right? Like resources, time. Sometimes by the time you ask for something or there is a problem, sometimes the answer is we want something, we can't fix it right now.
Yeah.
Just where the production happens to be. But it's still valuable to know. It's still valuable to tell someone. It's still valuable to maybe like put it forward so that next time you can try it out. I love it when people bring up new ideas.
But yeah, even if you just bring it up just so you can talk about it, and sometimes your idea that's so smart turns out that we've already tried it. You know, sometimes it's like I remember having conversations with supervisors where I was like, why don't we do this? And they're like, we did. It totally blew up in their faces. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see how that could maybe not work. Because, you know, you're only looking at how it solves problem A, but not the problem B that it creates. You know, and then saying, well, wouldn't it be better if everybody did this because it solves problem A? And it's like, well, it's better for you because you know how to handle that. But for everybody else, you know, you got all kinds of people tripping over all the new problems that are coming up out of it. So
yeah, there's never
sometimes
like
you do have to try to make a nice system that works for as many people as possible, so that not you know, the other 30 people on the crew aren't going, well, they're happy, but the rest of us aren't.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. Like it's about lessening the impact and balancing out the impact between, you know, everyone so that it can be balanced. And it's a tricky, I mean, that's why every animation production is different. You know, different studios, different shows, different crews within that show. Like there's so many different factors that go into making the whole thing work. And supervising at least is like, if you get to a position where you're supervising within your department, at least it's a department that's familiar to you. So you will understand the workflows. You will probably have your own ideas for like, oh, I kind of wish we did this or wish we did that. So it won't be like a huge like culture shock. You know, it's like the first step into understanding like the bigger web. It's and for like a lot of people, it's like when they first see the node view and they're like, what is this? And then like once you kind of understand the building blocks of it, it's easier. So it's like that first step to understanding the node view, and then it gets less scary.
Yeah. This actually brings up another point I want to talk about, more about interactions with kind of management and systems and stuff like that. But when you're in a leadership position, or even before you're in a leadership position, playing more politics, or playing the game kind of, what are ways you would say are good to play politics or playing the game to kind of make yourself stand out or get into these leadership positions? Because it's a little bit trickier for artists, I would say.
Yeah.
I think in this industry, we have a very big disadvantage compared to other industries of being able to play a corporate business game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to take it?
Go, Pat.
I don't think that like there isn't the level of cutthroatness that I hear about. Not saying that there hasn't been any, that I haven't heard of anything. There is always some of that. But you know, when you talk to two different people who have two different perspectives on something that happened, whether it's somebody getting a promotion or what, and someone who's feeling slighted by it, you're always getting different stories, and yeah, that's always interesting. So like, you know, it's hard to take sides ever in hearing that stuff. I would always recommend not to get too involved. I don't think Teams is ever that good. It may seem tempting that if you ally yourself with somebody that like they'll carry you up the ladder or something.
Yeah.
And it may work, and it may work out in the short term. but I don't know. I think people get what they work for, and in the end, some people do get positions that they aren't qualified for, and it bites them in the ass. And you know, all you can do is really cheer them on while they have it, because at least they gave it a good shot. But it's longevity isn't going to be there. There, as much as we're all like, it's really easy to point out at the hot creators today who are like pitching and launching their own shows, and are like, their names are in all the magazines, they're giving talks at and seminars at festivals, and then you never hear from them again in 5 or 10 years. Not that they actually disappear or anything, but like, there were all kinds of people 15 years ago and 20 years ago, and I'm hoping they're all doing well. But like, hot styles are hot at the moment, and whatever your political allegiances in studios, I wouldn't put too much trust in it. I say share your knowledge, help everybody along, because the more people who can do a good job, the more likely you are to attract strong projects. One person can't make a show, so we need everybody doing their best.
Yeah, I think like there's only been one time in my career that I felt like I've had to play politics. I didn't. Just like I was like, no, I refuse. That person left, so I was lucky. I think for the most part, though, the people that I've seen in studio who are generally geared towards wanting to be supervisor, wanting to run a crew, they do get noticed, just because believe me, a lot of introverts come out of the animation, schools, and they're not going, wow, I can't wait to get a group of 20 people together and manage them. Like,
yeah, public speaking, let's do it.
Yeah. I will say though, as far as like, maybe not playing politics, but in a sense of like how to use more of that sort of business and management side of things, send emails. They like emails. We may prefer to like send things over like whatever message system or whatever. Send emails, check up on the emails. As per my previous request, can I get a review? You have to know your rights as a worker, that you are allowed to, like, you should be having reviews. You should be getting feedback and critique on what you're doing and how to improve. You should be discussing your goals. And I think, it's like that same, you got to kind of use the same sort of push and language that when you're first looking for jobs, because that's how the higher up sort of respond to that stuff. The people on the business end respond to the emails and they get a lot of stuff. So please follow up with them. Oh, they're sorry. You're right. They will do a meeting for you. Let's discuss it later. So you got to be a little bit broken record about it. But I have found, even with working with production much more closely than I ever had in my career, I constantly, not even just for promotions, but for anybody wishing to communicate with production, I keep telling them, don't word of mouth it. Did you send an email? Send them an email. So get to know your production crew. They are just as important as, the artist around you. It is a whole different set of skills that is like mind-blowing. And they do appreciate the connection with the artist. So if you can like make yourself known to your production manager, your production assistants, just the people who work in the studio, the financial people, do that and just get to know them like people. You don't have to go out of your way to be someone different or to be ultra professional, but understand that that's how they communicate. They're not in the same realm of things that you guys are. They're in their own little financial production planning bubble. But just reaching out, getting to know them a little bit, and then just send emails. Hey, I'm really interested in learning more about the supervisor position. Who can I talk to about that? Send it off, see what they say.
Yep.
Yeah. I would say be personable in person, but be professional in emails. Like,
yeah,
it's really great to have that little back and forth. Be like, oh, how are your kids? Oh, did you see that movie on the weekend? Did you see Soul yet? Oh, I loved it. but like in the email, being personable, like just keep that all aside. Just keep it to the point,
Yeah.
diplomatic, really formal. Not really formal, but like enough that it seems like you're a professional,
Yeah.
because that's another thing that they're going to respond really well to, because they've got a million friggin' emails coming in and out
Oh
just on
yeah.
whatever production they're working on, that they're just cycling in and out and in and out. Like, here's some assets. Oh, you've got some stuff coming in. Oh, we have somebody taking leave. Okay, well, we've got whatever. And then having your email come in, they're going to read it quickly and put it, either star it and put it into an email, into a folder for later, and maybe forget to follow up on it. But like having that chain, like the great thing about emails versus IMs is that, yeah, there's always a record there, and all they have to do is search your name real quick, or any keyword, and bring it up, and have it all there, and they can always bring it up. And if it's too personable, if you got inside jokes there because you had a chat with them about Soul and how good it was because it was so good, that's great. But like when they're reading that inside joke that you had, it might have worked back in March when they had seen it, but it won't work in September when they're reviewing it again. So like just keep that stuff clean.
It's about understanding like what the purpose that you're going for, right? If I am just checking up with people like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while, how's it going? That's one thing. But you are advocating for yourself, for a promotion, for a job step. So you are distinctly doing something that is in your agency as an artist to do for your career. And that's when it's really good to be to the point. I have to edit my emails all the time. Like when I ask for a review, or when I'm doing something that I'm like, this isn't like, the day in, day out of the job stuff. I'm friends with my production manager. I can be casual with her.
Yeah.
I know my bosses. I can be casual with them. But when I ask for a review, or when I'm asking for something for my job, or I need to have a meeting, I have to edit my email so I don't say, hey, do you guys think we can have a meeting? I just say, I need a meeting. Like,
Yeah. Because
yeah,
the
I
other
have
thing
to,
is, you
yeah.
don't know who that email is going to end up being forwarded to, or even if that production manager moves on to another project and it falls onto somebody else's lap, you need that communication line to be the same.
Yeah. So to the point, filter emails so you're not using like fluffy language, because you deserve to have those answers. You're allowed to send that email and go, when can we set up a meeting?
Yeah.
Not, hey, if it's okay with you, I was thinking that maybe we could do a meeting if it's not too inconvenient. Nah, just ask for a meeting. Ask for a review. Ask for whatever you need.
That's a very good answers. I really like them. Yeah. So I think going to end off with a couple of questions, and then we can go into participants' questions.
Cool.
So for my last question I have for both of you, what is the most positive impact you made on somebody you were supervising? It could be positive for them or positive for you. Your choice.
It's interesting to hear people say good things to you. Like I've supervised people who've told me after the fact that, like, oh, you were great. Thank you so much. And you're like, oh, that's fantastic news. Thank you. Like that feedback is super welcome, because you're always looking at feedback from superiors, but you're not working with your superiors. You're working with the team of animators. So you don't know, am I communicating okay? Am I getting you what you need? Because it is a collaboration. It's not, it's not like you're the boss and checking the clock. Like it's about, I need to try to get you guys to do work you're proud of, so that you'll tell people what you worked on rather than like never mention it. So getting those moments of feedback are my favorite parts of the perks of the job, because that's the best part. As we mentioned earlier, like for anybody coming right out of school, like you're so influential on them as the face of what animation has in store for them. So there's a big responsibility there, but if I haven't scared anybody off right off the bat, that's fantastic. Because it is a
Awesome.
good job.
Yeah. Awesome. Any thoughts, Megan?
Yeah, I'd say it's hard to choose just because like I've been supervising for so long. Yeah, it's hard to choose one moment because I've had similar moments where someone said like, I think what the ones that stand out to me the most is when, you know, and I've had it like a you know, a small amount of times that someone's saying like, I didn't think I could do it, but you showed me like how to do it, or, you know, because you worked with me, I realized I could, or something like that. And it's those moments, those aha moments, or when I think one of my best moments where it wasn't like supervising in particular, but it was like training. I had decided after the first season of Hilda, I was like really burnt out by the end of it. And I just wanted to train people. I'm like, you know, I've been stuck in this office for too long. Being the animation director has taken me away from the crew more. It was sort of a bummer. I wanted to work with animators again. And so me and Diane sort of worked on a training module. And actually, well, Jeff, it was the first time we did training at Mercury.
I know.
And yeah, it was Emily was there. Yeah.
I was 3 months too early for that one.
Yeah. So, but I specifically, because we were training everybody on Tangled scenes. And I think one of my favorite moments was like when I gave a scene of Rapunzel like bolting towards the camera, like on a curve. And it scared the heck out of everybody because they're like, whoa, wait, this is like our second scene. And she's like running towards the camera, like ninja style. It's not a cycle. She's rotating as she's doing it. She's on a curve and all that other stuff. And like everyone kind of started off with like, how am I going to do it? And that's my favorite thing to do, is to kind of show people like, okay, yeah, when you feel that intimidation, slow down. Here's how we plan it out. Here's how you ask for help. And then by the end of it, you can do it. So it's seeing the successes that people have is like one of the biggest perks of the job. Like it's so warm and fuzzy.
Awesome. I'm very glad to hear it from both of you.
And then overloading them on their next batch.
Yeah, of course, because they did so good, and you're like, great. Now you.
Now he's Eugene too.
Yeah. It's the Eugene transformation sequence where he turns into 3 Transformers and then break dances.
Oh God. This isn't Pen Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were all really great answers to all my questions. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. We'll answer a few questions from the audience now. And if you're in the audience and you want to ask anything, shoot it off in the Zoom chat. I think we also have a Twitch thing going on right now. So
we do, yeah.
If there's questions in that, I can't see them, but hopefully somebody, a moderator, can throw them up.
Yeah, Laura's got it. So
Thank you very much.
She'll post it. Yeah.
We have one from Matthew. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What do you guys think about supervising people with more experience than you?
That is so intimidating. when I was at Kaleidoscope, after that first supervising gig, what we had done is we really used Flash as like symbol animation, which is largely what we're doing in Harmony now, but like as opposed to hand drawing everything. So when we finished that production, we were coming onto Delilah and Julius, or what was it? Maybe it wasn't that show, but it was something. It was a show that like most of the animation team were used to hand drawing everything, and they weren't really familiar with this moving symbols stuff around. And they wanted me to give a tutorial on how to do that, since I was supervising on that. And they were like, oh, we were going on a Johnny test. That's what it was. And they were like, yeah, we're going to do that more with Johnny test. So show everybody how to do symbol animation. And I had to prepare a tutorial. And I'm looking at people, I was 26 or something, and I was looking at people who were like nearing 40, and I'm like, I don't, like, you guys know how to animate. I still have only been in this industry for like a year or two, and you guys have like 20 years on me. What the F? That's so intimidating. But remembering that your job isn't, as a supervisor, isn't to tell people that they're doing bad work. Like that's not it at all. You're not a quality control person. Your position is there to assist people in hitting whatever mark it is. So whenever you're looking at a shot, you never know whether it's, you know, is something looking the way it looks because they don't know how to get it there, or maybe it's that they have different expectations of what is acceptable for the scene, or maybe, you know, maybe they just don't know what they can do with the software. So like there's always different things, and finding out what those issues are. I was supervising one guy who right off the bat I was explaining to him what an antic and it was and what a settle is, and I was like, this is, you know, because I had just recently been taught that myself like 6 months prior, you know, and then he's like, all right, cool, yeah, and he was so good, so nice to, like, you know, accept all of my wise teachings. And then like that Friday we were having beer and pizza, and I saw him talking to Ron Doucette, who was like the big director at the time at that studio. And I walked over to them and I was like, oh, you guys like how was your first week or whatever? And he's like, oh, great. And Ron was like, yeah, I brought this guy over. He's got like 10 years experience of doing like stop motion animation on all these shows. And I was like, oh, like he knows, like people know, like they know what they're doing. You know, your role isn't to like teach people always. It's just to remind them stuff they already know. But yeah.
That's good. Yeah, Megan, what do you think about supervising people with more experience?
Well, Pat put it a great way. Like it is just, it's not your, supervisor's job isn't just to say things are bad, right? Like you don't have to find faults in people's work, you know, but you got to trust that everyone brings something to the table in their own way. I know some amazing animators who like, when their animation is finished, I don't got to say anything. It looks good, right? If it looks good, cool, send it through. But when they start, like their framing's off, or, you know, they tend to have a habit over here, or maybe they need help planning and time managing. You know, there's so
hooking up to other shots.
Or hooking up to other shots. Yeah, you know. So I can't think of any animator that I've worked with who doesn't have an incredible strength and some things they need to work on in the meantime. It's like experience points, right? Like if you're making like a D&D character, like you can't have high stats everywhere. So trust that you as a supervisor, you have high stats and wisdom, and that's good because there's some barbarians animators, right? So, you know, you just kind of have to like trust yourself too. And for me, it's always great when I work with people who have more experience than me, because it means I can rely on them too. It means I can trust them. It means that I'm like, okay, well, that means like, are you okay with me taking less time with you and helping someone else? And generally they're cool. They can run on their own. So if anything, it's like you as a supervisor are not like your team leader, but it doesn't have to mean that you're like heads and tails above everybody. It means you have skills that complement the role that you're in.
That's very good.
You're like a motorcycle sidecar. You're not in charge. You're just there to go, hey, the map says turn left, dummy.
Fair.
Maps.
They're still the star. They still get to drive that thing. Do the jumps.
Yeah.
No, not the jumps.
I think the best way I heard somebody explain why you should get into supervising was you shouldn't get into it to be in power over people. You should be doing it to be a better team member.
Exactly.
Yeah, we got another question too from the Twitch chat. Is generating motivation part of a super's role to the team? Are you guys motivational?
I like to think I am.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be part of the role, but I think it's part of the mark of a good supervisor. If you're motivating people, I think that's a huge plus. That's a huge asset. A lot of the way companies are structured seems to be like people at the top have a certain management style, and then the middle management will sort of model off of those. So everybody's bringing new cards to the table, but you're largely emulating those people. So like even at Atomic, I'm having a lot of conversations with higher up members who have been really fantastic in showing support and communicating in a certain way that lets you always feel supported and always feel like you're doing great. And that motivates me to be like, all right, cool. Like that's a great message. And I try to keep that positivity flowing down. I don't know if that's quite successful. I'm hoping everybody at Atomic feels that, but who knows? But yeah, that's something that you can see a little bit with each of the studios. Like you're seeing whether it's professionalism at Mercury or the fun studio of Jamfield. Like you're getting a lot of like those people's, the leadership's personalities are coming through in the ways that they use to motivate people.
Yeah.
So
I'd say that's pretty correct. Normally, like, I don't think, like, I'm really a big one for like really clear job expectations. And I don't like any sort of like, well, they should have done this and they should have done that. Well, where's that in writing that they should have done it, right? So
right.
I do think motivation is a team effort. It does have to start at the top though, because if the supervisors don't feel supported by the people above them, they're not going to be able to feel like they can support their animators. So it does kind of have to, it's like a ladder a bit with it. I don't think it is only the supervisor's role to motivate the team. I think motivation is very good. I think, in order to have like a healthy team, and it can't be fake motivation either. Like you can't be like, okay, everybody, it's Tuesday, and the next day, okay, everybody, it's Wednesday. Let's get, like
every day is what everything is
push,
wonderful.
push.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you need to kind of pick your battles, but that's why it's important for everyone to understand that they play a role in the environment and team energy. Because I think everyone can motivate each other. And it's good for all of us to, when we have a chance to do it, so that when we're feeling down, someone else can kind of do it. And that's how we balance each other out. Because I don't always have the energy to motivate people. I try my best, but I don't. But if I can make my supervisors feel supported and they have like a good sort of place to stand on, then even if I'm sort of like checked out, they're being like, yeah, we got this, so.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, as far as directing goes, there's a lot of talk about, or at least there was, I don't know if it's as prominent anymore, but when you're taking people like Tarantino or Kubrick and you're like, these people have like almost gone to the level of abusing their workers to get what they want out of them, and you're like, that's not great. That just makes you an asshole, and it doesn't really, there's other ways to get people to do their best work, but if you're in charge of something, you may not be the best, of the lighting department or of boards or rigging and builds. You don't know what goes into all of these different departments, but these people who are on your team do, and communicating with them and finding out what is important to them and what they can bring to the table is good. But if you don't have that excitement over a project, if you're not motivated, they're not going to really be either. Because like if you're an animation supervisor and you're like, I don't know, man, just make him walk. Like it doesn't matter. He just has to walk. Like then the animators are going, I don't care either. I just want to get this scene done so I can take off for the weekend. But if you're looking at the walk cycle from a perspective of like, no, like this isn't just any walk cycle, like let's put something into it, let's really play it up, and like this is where we're at in the story, this is what they're feeling, this is what I want, and even get a couple of quick gestural drawings in. You don't have to animate the cycle, the animator will do that, but giving them that kind of motivation, so that they know what your intentions are. I mean, as clearly as you can communicate them, that can help them a little bit more, and help them feel as if the effort and time they're putting into that walk cycle, just like, will actually pay off, because it is more than just reuse.
Yeah, there's no such thing as true authorship.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, we got another question. Since you're both anim directors, how is it different than supervising? And how did you make that jump from supervising to director? There are so many talented supervisors in every studio. How do you step up?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
me,
you go first.
What was your Conan moment?
Conan? Oh, well,
Gets on the throne
just
at the
like,
end.
I mean, luck is opportunity meets preparation, right? So the reason I got in to my position is really because I took the jump to jump into Atomic when they were starting up. I wasn't the first there. There's definitely other people there who had fielded it and tested it out, and I'm very thankful. But going in there while it was still on the ground level, they didn't have a whole lot of leadership roles implemented yet. They didn't have a studio like a line producer in-house or a director in-house. It was all still really small, but growing, and there was potential. And so taking that dive and jumping in to supervise there was great. But you're right. There are plenty of other supervisors there, and I had to beat the others to death to get this. No, I think I think it just comes down to at that point it comes down to who's available, what are your experience levels, what assets do you have that could contribute. I'm hoping Atomic made the right decision with me. Who knows? We'll see if they allow me to do this again. But
fair enough. Yeah. Megan, what are your thoughts on this?
It's sort of like similar in a sense that both me and Pat kind of left like an area that we were comfortable with. Like we were on shows that we were good at to make the change, right? Like
you helped develop the style of what Tangled would be. Like you were doing the main character's animation.
I was like obsessed. I was absolutely obsessed with Tangled. Like Tangled was the show that I jumped up and down and screamed when I found out we had gotten it. And I had gotten to do the first animation test of Rapunzel, and so I was obsessed. I was so deeply ingrained in this show, and I still animated on it while I was on Hilda because I'm I want to animate the long hair. But the reality was, and it was a very hard decision, and it was a decision actually that the chance opened up. So Hilda needed an animation director. I was talking with Phil, who's my friend, and he's really big on the Mickey shorts, and he had been approached, and he kind of was telling me I think I'm going to turn it down. You should try it. And I was really in that point. It's not my goal was never to be a director. I didn't set out to go, I want to be an animation director. All I knew is I felt very stagnant in where I was as a supervisor, and I felt like I could do more, but I didn't know what it was yet. And I had actually gone down to Burbank for CTN, and because I was so ingrained in Tangled, and I had met some of the people there, so I went to the Disney studio and I talked to Chris Sonnenberg, and he actually, because he people would go down for Mercury and they invite them to the tours of the Disney studio, which was really cool. We got spoiled a bit, but he actually asked me if I had considered being a director, because I had a lot of opinions because I want to do this and I want to do that.
I know how to change things.
Yeah, I wasn't joking on Facebook when I said you need to have control issues, because I never thought about being a director yet. Here I was with all these issues of oh, I would like this better. like what I was missing was my voice on something where I felt like I loved Tangled and I understood it, and I felt like I had so much to contribute, but I couldn't because it was someone else's thing, which is, I look back and that was kind of a mistake because I shouldn't be so ingrained in stuff. I don't think it's healthy to be that ingrained in a show that you get upset over the choices being made on the show.
Even if it's yours.
Even if it's yours, don't do it. But I basically felt that I wanted to take the next step, and I didn't know if it was right for me. Like, I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I was like, fuck it, let's give it a shot. And it was the same with animation. I went into animation because I didn't know what else I was going to do. All of the steps I've taken in my career have been, I don't know, let's give it a shot, because it was something new and it was something challenging. And what I found was completely the opposite of what people kept saying that directing was like, you know, where for me, directing is purely people management. It is 100% people management. It is so different. Like, I have to talk to so many more people. Like, it's like supervising on crack, because not only are you talking to the entire animation crew, but you're talking to all the other departments, and you're trying to figure out how to connect all those different departments. And it's a lot. It's like that whole other level. You're doing the exact same thing, but now like 20 different times. So the jump was, it was chance. It's kind of what it was. You got to keep, for anybody who's in a studio, you kind of have to keep your ear to the ground. You know, you got to kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in that studio. I've always been nosy. I've always looked in the folders. I've talked to the directors. What's this? What's that? When there's demos, I went a whole year with bugging the directors. Can I work on this? Can I work on this? And I got told no a bunch, tons of times, until they started saying yes. You can have one, but I did that one thing really good. So, but that's just kind of been it. Like, you're never gonna feel 100% confident doing it. All you need to know is, like, you want to try it, you want to do it. Keep talking and meeting people. Talk to the directors around, you know, you. Ask them how you can improve. Ask them what you can focus on. And really talk to the production managers too, because I know Hilda's like, I mean, like, Matt, you know, like, Hilda's a show that's like really artsy fartsy. Most of my day has nothing to do with the art. Yeah. Most of my day has absolutely zero to do with art. If I can contribute a little bit of like drawings or special poses, it's like early in the pre-production. Once we get to production, my days, meetings, lists, organizing, talking to people, solving problems, like, it really is people management. And I think that's one thing to remember if you want to get into directing, is that it isn't about having creative control over the eye candy.
Yeah, that stuff's all been squared away by everybody else.
Yeah, but even
by
like
the actual artists.
Yeah, like, as an animation director, because you're later on in production, that is, you know, later. But even like up front, you know, where if you start from production, like, you know, let's say like you're directing and you're in charge of the scripts, the storyboards, the character designs, all that other stuff, your artistic contribution to that is still more minimal than what a lot of people think, right? It's still a lot of management and problem solving and like thinking ahead. So, and what I've seen so far in the industry, which I think is really nice, is I see a lot of people and a lot of very, very creative directors being paired up with people who have other skills. Like, I am organization queen. So you can put me with someone like Andy who's got a creative mindset so much that is like, he's just like, it's just art all over the place. Because I can take that and I can organize it. But I think it is a good skill for everybody to have. And I think in general with this industry, a lot of the problems that the animators have, like us as animators or us when we start like have a challenge from, is because too much has been put on the art and not enough has been put on the management. So it's good for us to kind of bring those other skills and to encourage people who maybe who don't feel like they're like artistically capable, but they're really, really capable at management too. That is you can also get there. You don't have to be a superstar artist to be a director. Your other skills will pay off in that way too. We don't always have to be like production. And like I say that in like the best way, because it's like I think production's amazing. But you can be in that position and not be the most creative person in the world. You still are, just in your own way.
Mm.
So it was long-winded, but you know.
Oh, it was very good. Yeah. We don't have any more questions, so I think we'll start to wrap it up now. But if there's any ending advice either of you would like to say to, let's specifically target students for this, because this is for students first and foremost. So if there's any ending advice you want to give to students before signing off, just you have the mic.
Be proactive in knowing what you want, which is very tricky when you first come out of school, because you think you know what you want, but you don't have much experience yet. So get experience, work on a couple of productions, different styles of shows, different studios. It's always nice to start to feel out what is out there, and whether it's TV shows or movies or video games or whatever. There's all kinds of work out there, and having a breadth of experience will only help you do more, whether that's just animation, whether it's builds, comp, design, boards. Like, some of these positions are a little more coveted than others. Some of them are more tricky to come by than others. Obviously, there's only one director position on most projects, so that's hard to get. It's not really trial by blood, but you get those by building all those other blocks up. But planning out your own projects are always going to help you as well. See all those stages. A friend of mine is an animation director, a director. I don't mean to sully, but the way he got into those positions is simply by making short films on his own time, and he had fun stuff to work on. So this was a different era, maybe, when people were unemployed more often than not. But so it was easy to accept a couple shots to help out on his little videos, and then he'd have this thing made. And so he got experience working with people, collaborating, running a project, doing all of the creative parts as well, and it's always fun. And now he puts them in festivals, and people love it. But that opened doors to him to get into positions like directing as well. So knowing what you want is the hardest part. But and there's no shame in not figuring it out right away. I have a friend who wanted to supervise and direct for years, and he was very upset that he wasn't being given those opportunities. And then one day he was, and it was like, yeah, we always had you on the radar. It's just those opportunities have to open up. If you're just waiting on one studio to open that up, then it can be tricky.
Mm-hmm. So it is a pyramid, the hierarchy.
Yeah. We have a lot of talented people in Ottawa. Like, it's a hard thing, because like so many of the studios have their ingrained people. Like, I mean, I've only worked at Mercury, so I can't, that is how it is. Like, I'm happy here, but I also don't think that that's what everybody should do. Like, just because it works for me or I'm okay with it doesn't mean that that's the end all be all of how you should work. Like, there's so many different options, and it's true that some studios will have the opportunity for you while the studio you're working at, no openings are there. Go take that opportunity, because like really the advice is like, out of school, when you're in the studio, you are the one who dictates your own career path. And not to say that you won't find help from your peers or your supervisors or people that will, give you a leg up or mentor you or champion you. You will find those people. Like I've had those people work for me. Like Emma has been one of those people for me. She's always had my back. But it's not a guarantee. That's just like the little extra. That's like the lucky things. So you got to put yourself forward. You have to take the risk every once in a while to try something. You have to, and you can't wait until you're comfortable. Every single time I have put myself forward to ask to be on a project or ask to take a scene on the side or ask if somebody needs help, it hasn't been because I was confident. It was because like, I need to find a way for myself to get the experience that I otherwise wouldn't get. Because if I just kind of sat down and worked on the show that I was working on, I would just get the experience from that show. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'm doing all these other little things, I'm getting experience from those things. And it's small to start, but the more you put yourself out there, the more people will start remembering you. The no's will turn into yeses, little amount. And the yeses turn into much more opportunities. I had someone ask me, and this was like years ago, why do you get to be on all the demos? Like I had worked on demos for like a year and it was bonkers stressful, but it was an amazing time because like I was working on a different project like every few months. And they were kind of seeing like, oh, if you're on a demo, you must be like a superstar animator or something like that. So like, wow, like they just put you on, like they don't ask me. And I'm going, it's because I asked them for years. Constantly. Like I put myself forward until I didn't have to anymore. But it came with me being okay with being rejected and no, not now, or no, your stuff's not good enough. Your animation's not good enough. And I'm like, okay, got to work on that. But that's just kind of how it is. And it's the same if you want to be not even like a superstar animator or a layout artist or background artist. If you want to be a director, you need to have an overall view of how the system works and how stories work and how they're put together. Where are you going to get that experience from? You can't get it from whatever show you happen to be on. You can pick up a little bit, but you kind of have to go out of your way to fill your own blanks too, because the jobs that you get put on, the shows that you put on, that's not your career path. That's not like, oh, they know that if I go here and here, and eventually if I keep doing where I get put or keep staying where I get put, I'm going to be this thing. No, that's an arbitrary project. You just happen to be on that project or happen to be on that project. It's you that goes, I choose to do this, or I want to do this because I feel like it's going to take me to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I really liked everything I heard today, and I thank you both for coming on and giving lots of amazing advice. I learned a lot personally.
Kind words. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good feedback. We did it. Pat, we did it.
Yeah.
Hooray.
So thank you both for coming on and giving this amazing talk. Thank you, Laura, for moderating the Twitch and setting that up as well. That's awesome. And I think we'll end it there. I got some more talks in the works for hopefully in a week or two. We'll keep this stuff rolling. So everyone have a good night.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It was good stuff.
And keep on keeping on. if sometimes seeds take a little longer to grow than you thought they did. Because every plant is different.
We all find our path.